Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parents. In today's episode, my dog sent entitled parent and her kid to jail. My crazy father assaulted me over a casserole and he got away with it. My entitled stepfamily. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. My dog sent entitled parent and her kid to jail. Sit back and enjoy. This is long because I apparently can't do short. Many years ago, I was living in a beautiful sunny southern state. I had a cute little house that was completely fenced in, 5-foot fence in front, 8 fence on the sides and a 10 chain link fence in the back. I'm fortunate enough to work from home. My office was my patio unless it was raining. My dog, Sari, German Shepherd/Rottweiler mix, kept me company. At a year old, she was a big girl at 120 pounds. She was generally very sweet and kind but protective. She was well trained but also had a knack for disappearing to play with her animal friends, so I kept her on a chain too if we were outside. High school kids in the area had the tendency to use the alleyway behind my house to get to and from school. Most would stop and say hi to Sari and give her attention. She loved it. I honestly didn't mind. One day, I noticed that any time Sari was alone outside, some kids would rattle the back fence, throw things at it, then scream and yell at Sari. The kids would run off before I could see who they were. In case things got worse, I bought some security cameras and brought Sari with me anytime I went inside when the kids would be around. One day, I had to grab some work in the house and left Sari outside. Just for a moment. From inside, I heard the fence rattle and then Sari yelp in pain. I rushed outside just in time to see a kid try to throw a rock at Sari, along with some other kids. I was pissed. As I rushed over to Sari, I calmly asked them, "Did it ever occur to you to wonder why I keep my dog chained in fenced yard?" Then I unhooked her. Sari ran at my back fence and climbed over it. The kids started running down the alley with Sari right behind them, barking away. I let her go about 1/2 block, then whistled for her. She came trotting back all happy as can be. I checked her over and gave her a treat. She was fine. A couple of hours later, one of the kids came back with his mother, EP. EP, screaming, "You had your dog attack my son. He was only having a fun time. He's just a boy." Kid was at least 16 years old. "You scared him. It was just a joke. You had no right to do that. I'm calling the police and having that dog shot. Blah, blah, blah." I literally couldn't get a word in. Then she starts threatening me. So I called the police. The operator could hear her plain as day even though EP was at least 40 feet from me. The police showed up in about 5 minutes. 2 cars. I guess they were in the area. 4 officers. All very nice guys. 2 officers come talk to me, the other 2 talked to EP and her son. EP never stopped screaming and cussing. I explained what happened and showed the video to the officers. Show all of Sari's vet and training paperwork. I filed a report. Asked to press charges. The officers are petting Sari all the while because she's demanding attention from her new friends. She has her happy face on. Yes, Sari actually smiles. The 3 of us and Sari, on a leash, go outside towards the other group. We're about 10 feet from them when Sari suddenly cuts in front of me to stop me and starts growling. The skin around her face went tight, making it look like a hair-covered skull. The hair on her back raises up. Sari is very scary when she's like that. EP, screaming "See!" She raised that dog to attack black people. Racist. That dog needs to be put down. The 2 officers that were with me were African American. So, no. That part always annoys me, so I included it. I called back one of the officers that I had been talking to. He didn't want to come too close as Sari is showing large teeth. So I moved back towards my house. As quietly as I could, I told the officer that either EP or kid were carrying a gun. That's why Sari started getting protective. It had happened several times before. I guess to err on the side of caution, or to shut me up, he decided to search EP and kid. EP had an unregistered gun. Kid had a 6-inch switchblade, not legal in that state. So, in addition to a charge of animal cruelty, they got nailed for carrying a concealed weapon, being in possession of a firearm while on probation, resisting arrest, and a couple of other charges. EP never stopped screaming the entire time this happened, and while being driven away. I don't think that's how EP or kid expected to end the day. But I enjoyed it. Even better, I never saw her or her kid again, and the kids stopped harassing Sari. Wow, this could have turned out very differently. I think such a person would actually try to shoot your dog. Luckily, the police arrived on time and everything turned out okay. Can you please show me a picture of your dog if it won't work? NP, but I'm just interested. I put Sari inside when they came, so her getting hurt wasn't a concern. I'll have to look for one. Sari went over the Rainbow Bridge 5 years ago. The fact she threw race in, just wow. Anything to get the dog put down because her kids were being monster pricks. Glad she's gone. Yeah, that got me really mad. I was glad she was gone too. That's the only reason I say black entitled parents/kids are way worse than white or Latino entitled parents/kids. They always pull the race card. Always, no fail. Latinos, in my experience, either aren't super entitled or just get really catty. I haven't heard many pull "oh, is this because I'm a Latina?" How did you train your dog go to do these things? I might get a German Shepherd in a few months and was trying to find ways to train her to be able to do things like your dog since I live in a shady-ish area and I'm 13 and kinda useless when it comes to defending myself. Thanks OP. How would the dog know EP was carrying? Genuinely curious, I know nothing about firearms. I saw the title and imagined a police dog officer arresting an entitled mom with an anti-vax shirt and a little brat. Is this what happened? I can just imagine the dog with the biggest grin while the police are petting her, because she knows she's a good girl and she knows she did right. My crazy father assaulted me over a casserole and he got away with it. So, this is something that happened to me a long time ago, and something I've debated putting on a place like this. But I've decided that people need to know how horrible my father is. This is something I've told close friends before, and this is the first, but certainly not the only, horrible event regarding my father. Do also note that this is the farthest back I can remember. Context: I'm a 28M turning 29 next month, and this took place when I was very little, either 4 or 5 years old. It was in the summer just before my 5th or 6th birthday. At the time, my parents, younger brother, who was a baby at the time, and I were living in a middle of nowhere town close to family members. Dad worked a job and my mom was the stay-at-home wife, aka the typical family dynamic of the 90s/beginning of 2000s. During this particular day, my mom was doing errands with my grandma, her mom, and brought my brother with her, so it was just my dad and I. A co-worker of his was camping at a nearby campground that we frequently visited when we lived there, and my dad decided to get the camper trailer and camp out that weekend. We get there, and I'm invited to play with the other kids, including the 2 boys of the co-worker, who were either my age or a bit older than me. There was a nearby creek that was a popular swimming area for the kids, in spite of the potential cottonmouth snake, but being in the southern USA you're taught at a very young age to always keep an eye out for snakes. I bring this up because I loved to swim as a kid, and my dad strictly told me to not get close to the creek, because he didn't want me swimming just yet. There was a pool not far from the campground that I believe he was planning on taking me until things went south. However, while I was playing with the kids, I ended up tripping on a rock and tumbling into said creek and getting completely drenched. I was, and still am, a great swimmer, and the creek wasn't really deep, so I wasn't in any danger, but I was afraid my dad would be mad. The co-workers' kids were willing to vouch for me that I fell in by accident. We went to my dad's trailer, and sure enough, he immediately got mad, yelling at me that I wasn't supposed to go swimming. Although this is the farthest I remember back, I know that even then I was scared of him when he was mad, and I ended up being quiet as you couldn't say anything when he was mad without making the situation worse. The two boys fulfilled their promise to try and defend me, telling my dad it was an accident, only for my dad to tell them both to scram as he dragged me inside. I was tossed into the bathroom, as in literally thrown inside, with a towel and some dry clothes, and told me to quickly change. I did so without saying a single word. Even after I did what was told, he was still fuming. We were going to the co-worker's trailer for lunch, and my dad threatened me, or as he would say, promised, as he said all his threats were promises because he always intended to act out on his threats, that if I screw up one more time, I'll regret it. At the co-worker's trailer, the lunch was some kind of casserole. Like many kids, I was, and still am to some extent, a picky eater, so I already decided I wasn't hungry. But it took one blare of pure anger from my dad to get me to start eating. Within a couple bites I was getting nauseous, and I put the fork down and said I was no longer hungry. My dad flipped. He immediately started screaming at me to eat every bite of the casserole, and that I wasn't leaving that spot until I did so. The co-worker, bless his heart, tried to be a mediator by saying I didn't have to eat the food if I didn't like it, and that he has no problem making me a sandwich. My dad told him to shut up, and threatened to sock him if he said another word. The next 5 minutes was me bawling my eyes out, slowly eating the casserole as my dad was screaming right next to my ear about how he's gonna beat the shit out of me if I didn't do what he says. Fourth bite in, my stomach turned, and I fell off the chair and threw up. I felt him grab me by the hair and dragging me to the trailer, me wailing for him to not be mad at me. I will note that my parents were the type of parents to have a wooden paddle for spanking, but at the time it was only my mom who had the paddle, as she had enough restraint to make sure I didn't feel anything more than a slight sting to get the point across for why I was in trouble. And my dad proved he had zero restraint, as he yanked my pants off and swung the first blow. It was an agonizing strike that was so strong I immediately stopped crying and felt numb, like he smacked all senses out of me. He swung a second time, and I blacked out. The rest happened from the testimony of my grandma, as I was unconscious for 2 hours. While I was getting struck, my co-worker called my mom in a panic, telling her to go to the campgrounds immediately, fearing for the well-being of myself. My mom and grandma immediately drove from their destination, a little over an hour and a half drive to the campground. Unfortunately, my dad stormed out after striking me several times in blind fury, and threatened to beat the shit out of the co-worker and his kids if they ever mentioned what they witnessed, and the co-worker fled. I don't know if my dad attempted to hurt the co-worker and his kids, but considering how bloodthirsty he was, I wouldn't be surprised. My mom and grandma pulled up to see my dad sitting on a chair in front of the trailer, still fuming. He immediately told them both that I got what I deserved and I was making him look bad. They both went into the trailer to see me face down, pants off, bottom of my back to the upper half of my thighs nearly black from bruising. My mom thought I was dead, and it took my grandma finding my pulse to find out that I was still alive. Just unconscious. My grandma floored it to the town's police station. There was no service for phones in that area at the time, and my mom stayed behind to make sure my dad didn't try to hurt me any further. That's when I regained conscious and saw my grandma driving off. Thing is, my dad had no remorse for what he did, even saying that he couldn't care less if he killed me or not. He didn't even bother to check if I was still alive after continuously striking me, until the cops were involved. He went inside and laid out a sob story about how he didn't mean to hurt me like that, and "Dad always love you, bud." Being the innocent kid I was, I believed him, but now I know it was just a lie to relieve himself of guilt. I wish I could say that he went to prison and I never had to deal with him again. But that wasn't the case. My mom did have plans to fully divorce him and hold all charges on him, but when she visited him in the county jail, he thoroughly convinced her that she couldn't afford the divorce, which my mom confirmed was true, and that my brother and I can't survive without him, not to mention how she would be a social outcast for being a single mom. How true this was, but this was the very end of the 90s/just before 2000. He also laid it thick that even in the case she got her kids away from him, my dad will not rest until he killed her and took my brother and I to where nobody would ever see us again. My mom tried to remain brave, but the threats worked, mostly due to how he was back to having no remorse over what he did to me. He was just upset he got caught. So my mom dropped the charges and she still lived with him until I was turning 11. However, the whole family was well aware of what he did, and they made it clear if he hurt me like that again, or hurt my mom and brother like that, they will not hesitate to call the cops. The only thing that managed to do was make my dad much smarter about how to abuse us, sticking more to scaring the daylights out of us and making us feel like accidents who nobody loves with his words than bruising us up with his fists, and when he did physically hurt my mom, brother, and I, he did so in ways that could be covered up. As for how he is today, he's not as physically aggressive as he used to be, but he's become even more heartless and unfiltered on his words, and continues to believe that he does no wrong, and even has the right to hurt his kids, even when said kids are now adults. I have much more to say about the shit this monster has done, and I might tell more of what he's done to me in my life. But for now, I just wanted to say how he assaulted me over a casserole, and how he managed to get away with it. And this is why parents should not be able to choose whether to press child abuse charges after they've been brought to the police. Ever. Agreed. The worst part though, is that after my mom and dad divorced and my brother and I were forced to live with him, which is a whole nother post, he did a similar thing to my brother for standing up to our dad's BS. And once again, charges were dropped, though in this case it was because he managed to convince us into believing he'd hunt us down if we were honest to CPS, so he sadly lied about the event when questioned. I just hope that you're not in contact with this psychopath. I'm sure that when he is feeble enough that he'll be thrown into a home, but I think that that's too good for him because he just sounds like he enjoyed beating the hell out of you and your family. Has he still kept up trying to threaten you, or have you actually stood up to him since that incident and tell him that he tries and he's going on the ground? Cause he sounds like if somebody stands up to him he'll back down really quick if they are bigger and stronger than him. Oh my god, he's a real-life monster. Truly a sociopath. I'm so sorry you're still dealing with him. He's a narcissist. Sorry you had to endure that trauma. Never. And I mean never lift a finger to help this person. If you ever get a chance, make sure he knows he's dead to you. Also, if it were me, I would wait until he's old enough to not put up much of a fight, and I'd find him and get some revenge. Let him know what it feels like to be powerless. My entitled stepfamily. Throwaway for privacy, all names are fake, but I'm still trying to be cautious. I just need to vent, and since my stepfamily has a few entitled parents and kids, I figured this would be a decent place. Anyway, some background: I'm a 17-year-old guy who lives with my dad, entitled stepmom Karen, and 16-year-old entitled stepsister Becky. Yes, I plan on moving out ASAP. Karen and Becky moved in with my dad and I 3 years ago at the start of lockdown after Karen and my dad had a rushed courthouse marriage. Karen's extended family is also quite entitled, but thankfully I haven't seen much of them due to COVID. So without further ado, here are some miscellaneous stories about my entitled stepfamily. Our house has 3 bedrooms, the master bedroom and second bedroom on the second floor, and a small guest room in the basement. When Karen and Becky first moved in, Becky was supposed to move into the guest room because I was already living in the second bedroom. Instead, Becky threw a tantrum, like straight up screaming and crying at 13 years old, because the guest room was too small and didn't have room for this enormous pink dresser he apparently loved so much. Karen backed her up and convinced my dad to give her the second bedroom so that she doesn't have to be so far away from my daughter. My dad caved and I had to donate most of my furniture because seriously my new bedroom is so small. The kicker? Becky got rid of that dresser 2 weeks later because she decided she didn't like the color pink anymore. No, I didn't get my bedroom back. I live in the basement to this day. Becky is lactose intolerant, and when she and Karen moved in, Becky demanded that the entire house be a dairy-free zone. Well, second verse same as the first, Karen backed her up and convinced my dad to agree. This lasted for 2 months until my dad got fed up with paying a fortune for gallons upon gallons of almond milk when only 1/4 of the family actually needs it. We still keep almond milk in the house, but thankfully we also have cheese and regular milk now. My dad and I were going out of town for a family funeral. Karen and Becky never even met this family member and insisted on staying home, and I asked Karen to feed my hamster Jimmy and refill his water while I was gone. Thankfully my dad and I were only gone for a little while because I came back to my poor Jimmy half dead. One emergency trip to the vet later and Jimmy was fine, and Karen apologized profusely because she had forgotten to feed him and refill his water. Later on, either to hurt me or to gloat, I'll never know, Becky told me that she and Karen had purposefully starved and dehydrated Jimmy in the hopes that he'd die. Her reason for trying to kill my pet? She and Karen didn't like how he smelled, which I know is bull because Jimmy's cage is in my room, far away from anything else in the house. Then, when I went to my dad to try to get justice for Jimmy, Becky acted all hurt because I made up lies about her, and I got punished instead. We were on a train trip with Karen's brother, my entitled step-uncle Richard, along with his 2 kids Haley, 12, non-entitled, and Jaden, 9, very entitled. Jaden's phone battery ran out, and Richard told Haley to give her phone to her brother. Haley obliged because she was paying attention to the scenery anyway, but I got the sense that no wasn't exactly an accepted answer in their family. Well, a few hours later, Haley's phone ran out of battery as well, and Richard actually expected me to hand over my phone to placate his bored gremlin. Now it's not like I was using my phone, but there's no way in hell I was trusting a 9-year-old with my expensive tech. I told Richard no, and he just gave Karen this look like, is he serious? Anyway, Karen tried to force me to give Jaden my phone since my dad was in the bathroom and she was technically the adult in charge of me. I was able to stall long enough for my dad to get back and put an end to that bull. I'm just glad he backed me up on that one. A couple weeks ago, while I was babysitting Jaden, I was putting on a movie and Jaden picked out an R-rated horror movie. Since Richard hadn't left any specific instructions about what Jaden was or wasn't allowed to watch, I made my best judgment and told him he couldn't watch it. Jaden threw the temper tantrum to end all temper tantrums, cussing me out worse than a COD lobby. Seriously, he was more creative with his insults than most teens I know. I was kinda impressed. Nonetheless, I called Richard to tell him what his son had said and to ask about the movie. Richard basically said that Jaden was allowed to watch whatever movie he wanted and that he wouldn't have said what he did if I just let him watch the movie. I was just like, okay dude, it's your kid, and put on the movie. Jaden cried and screamed through the whole movie but wouldn't let me turn it off. The next week, Richard called me to yell at me because Jaden had been having nightmares and it was all my fault for putting on a horror movie for him. I tried to explain that I'd asked his permission, but he just yelled louder and he swore he'd never ask me to babysit again. Fine by me. I just hung up midway through the tirade because he was yelling so loud I couldn't understand him anyway. And finally, Karen and my dad are planning a vow renewal/belated wedding to make up for the fact that they couldn't have one during COVID. My dad wants a modest ceremony within their means, while Karen wants a blowout that they can't afford in any way. She recently approached me and asked that I donate my college fund so that she can have her dream wedding. I obviously said no, but she wouldn't take that for an answer, and she's been pulling weirder and weirder ploys to get me to give her my money. The latest one was that she pulled up my grades from my past 3 years of high school and tried to convince me that I wouldn't get into college anyway because I didn't have straight A's. For the record, my grades are fine. Not valedictorian material, but I'm not a failure or anything. Wish me luck, you guys. I can't wait to get out of here. Hopefully when you find a way out of there, please be sure to get all your documents and important papers. I'd say get copies anyway because you never know if Karen might have the brilliant idea to throw you out because of any number of her elaborate reasons, but still, hopefully you can get away from these bunch of maniacs soon. Contact other relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc., and tell them Karen is trying to take your college fund for her do-over wedding. Blast it on social media what the biatch is doing. Tell your dad about her trying to get your college fund for her wedding. Maybe dad will finally corral her and stop her BS. Good luck. Nope. Opie should discreetly record her trying bully him for the money. Then he can play it back for dad when she insists he's lying and should have his college money taken away as punishment. I feel like your dad is your problem as much as Karen. As an adult, he should have taken some time before inserting a new wife and her teenage daughter into your lives and home. The unfair room situation would have made me lose any respect for him then and there. What did Karen bring to the marriage? Did she sell her home or didn't she own one? I get the feeling her life and her daughter's life greatly improved because she married your dad while your life was crap because of them. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Please make sure that Karen can't get to your college fund. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.